Good afternoon, everyone, or possibly good morning. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today on a deep dive or a diving into Key2Act Job Cost. My name is Brandon Mayer, and we have Tim Braun here, who is going to be showing you a great overview of Key2Act Job Cost for you here today. Before I hand it over to Tim to get deeper into what he's going to be covering, just a couple of general items for you. We'll be monitoring the questions pane throughout the entire webinar, so please feel free to ask your questions that way. We'll also take people off mute as well, and give you the opportunity to ask any questions that you may have as well. So with that said, Tim, I will hand it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Brandon. Yeah, I'll be doing an overview of Key2Act Job Cost, formerly Wensoft. And so we'll start with job status, which is sort of the heart of the module. And we'll look at some of the setup items and some of the integration points with GP as we go along. So under inquiry, this is job status, and this is the most commonly used window in job costs. This is where project managers or accountants come and get up to the minute status of how a job is doing. So the way job cost is set up, in this column, we have 9 major cost categories, typically labor, materials, equipment, subcontractors. They're all user definable except for labor, because just about every job has labor. And that one's left alone because all of the labor and payroll reports are tied to labor cost only. So you have your job number. Throughout the module, you'll see this, which is notepads, so you can attach detailed notes. Most of the main windows have that capability, as well as the paperclip for doing document attachments. Going across the columns, you'll see committed, posted, estimated, and forecasted cost. And then in the lower right, you have your expected contract, anticipated margin, and margin percent for this job. So if we start with committed cost, what those are open commitments on purchase orders and also sales orders. So you have the option of doing purchase orders directly to jobs, and also you can run costs through sales orders and attach those to a job and update the costs on the job. So if we drill into materials, you can see we have various cost codes. So cost codes are the detailed posting level within job cost. They're user definable. You can have up to 4 segments, up to 5 alphanumeric characters in each segment. It's kind of like that GL account segment when you first set GP up. Once it's set, it's locked down forever. So in this case, we can keep drilling down, and you can see there's that committed amount, purchase order for advanced office systems. And you can drill all the way back to the original source transaction. So what job cost has is alternate GP windows for entry points such as purchase order, accounts payable, payroll, inventory, general ledger. And in most of those windows, what we've done is taken the GP window and added this third row, where you pick a product indicator. So unbilled would be just a normal PO that doesn't go to a job or service call. A product indicator of job cost opens up and lets you enter a job and that detailed cost code. So when that happens, it's going to update the job as well as all of the purchasing tables. And then when you do your receiving, those costs will post to the job. And also it'll create the payable just like a receiving against a normal purchase order does. So where you see the blue amounts here, that means there's been transactions posted, and then you can drill down. So for labor, for instance, this window gives you the estimate breakdown and costs. We'll talk about forecasts in a little bit. Actual costs, again, you can keep drilling all the way back to the original source document to see, in this case, Pilar Ackerman did the work 10 hours on the date, and here are the pay rates and all that. When you see that little exclamation point yellow, like right here, that means you have a cost overrun. Your posted cost exceeds your estimate. So again, all these transaction types, you can keep drilling down. And this was another item on that PO. So you have the document type, payables is PM, REC, purchase order, and this was another item on that same purchase order, only this one came in and was posted. For estimated cost, when you create that job, every cost code has an estimate. And we leave the estimate alone for the life of the job. So then at the end of the job, you can give feedback to the estimators to see how accurate they were. So really that's your original estimate plus any change orders. Forecast, on the other hand, it starts off as the estimate equal to the estimate amount. And then you can do a forecast revision, either increase it or decrease it. So for example, this one, there was a weather delay. You had people on the work site already, so it's going to cost you $1,000 of extra labor costs. And the reason forecast is important, not only that updates this expected contract and margin, I should say that the anticipated margin is the expected contract less that forecasted cost. And also, if we go to this build position window, job cost has percentage of completion revenue as an option. So you'll hear the term POC, and here's that calculation, posted cost divided by forecast times that contract amount. That gives you the contract earned for this particular job. So with that option, what job cost does is when you do your month-end closing, we calculate it'll calculate a journal entry for each division, and it'll do this calculation for every job in the division and create that journal entry. So that's all automatic. A couple other things in this window, we're comparing contract earned to billed to give you a quick idea if you're over or under billed on the job. Also posted cost and cash receipt to give you an idea of how your cash flow is doing. So in this case, when it's negative, that means you probably should get out there and send out an invoice and get the cash flow going. This billing button shows you all the invoices you've created for the job. And again, you have that drill down capability, so you can come back and look at the details of this particular job invoice. You also have the ability to reprint invoices. There's a number of different invoice formats. We're not going to look at all of those today, but it's based on the job type, and we'll look at some of the different options in a few minutes. This window also shows you there's no cash received. Or I should say, if you click on this, there is cash received, sorry. And you can also drill back to see the original cash receipts. So it's going back to the accounts receivable module. As cash receipts are posted, it recognizes that it's a job cost invoice. It'll update AR and then also the job cost tables. For change orders, basically you can think of change orders. It's a change to the original contract. The setup works like a job within a job. So again, you have the note field, attachments if you need to attach photos of a job site, shop drawings, those kind of things. And then you enter your estimate and attach your cost codes, and that's how change orders work. Couple more windows here, just a quick payment summary is really the aging of the accounts receivable for the customer. So it follows the setup, 30 to 60 days, whatever you have the aging set up in GP it uses. Labor breakdown gives you another option to do measurements on progress on the job. You can enter a field percent at a cost code level. Then this window and some of the reports do projections based on that. Tells you where you should be, and it compares to actual to identify possible cost overruns or trouble areas. Job status by period gives you trending. So you pick the current period, in this case, April, and it shows the 3 prior periods. So you can recognize big jumps in cost or earned or whatever parameters you're following. And you can do that for posted and forecasted cost. The vendor window gives you quick access to any vendors that have transactions on this job. Let's see, okay, there's one. So you can do a quick check if somebody calls and want to know if it's saying they haven't gotten paid yet, if the check's in the mail, for instance, you could drill down and get all that information from this point. Let's look at job maintenance. This window is where you set up your jobs. And the required fields are in bold. Few other things, certified payroll is if you have certified payroll jobs, job cost will print that report for you if you're using GP payroll. Again, notepads, document attachments. You pick your division, your customer, your contract type. So we have fixed, cost plus NTE being not to exceed. So you'd set up a T&M as a cost plus as well. And for those kind of jobs at the cost code level, you define what the billing rates are. So you can have a percentage of cost, you can have a flat amount per unit, like $100 per hour, those kind of things. We have some user definable fields here. Billing type. We have standard, and there's various invoice formats that go there. The contract type is going to drive what that billing type. And also we have project level. So if you think of a project number, this job's not on a project, but you have the ability to assign multiple jobs to the same project number. And then you do project level invoicing where you're invoicing multiple jobs on the same invoice. So the customer gets one invoice and it gets broken down back at a job level within job cost. The tax schedule, we are using the GP tax engine here. And you can do things like set up master taxes and exclude, for instance, if labor isn't taxable, you have that ability to set it up that way. So if you did an invoice for just labor, it wouldn't have any tax on it. We have a transaction level detail invoice as well for your T&M jobs if you have those. User defined is for AIA type jobs where you set up bill codes. When we jump into our cost codes, basically in this setup, I'm using POC accounting so that GL account is driven at a division level. So all of the labor costs for that division are going to go to this work in process labor for the commercial division GL account. If you're not using POC, you can assign any GL account to cost codes. And here you enter that estimate units times an amount per unit to give you the estimate for the cost code. Going back to that job status window, it's rolling everything up, to that cost category level. So you see all the labor at the summary level, and then the details are built from the individual cost code, which is again the posting level. We have more user-defined fields here. If you're using GP payroll, you can have some of these fields like state, local tax, rate class, which is an option to drive pay rates. In a lot of states, it's based on where the work is done. So the worker might live in Minnesota, but if he's doing work in Wisconsin, in some cases, he'd be subject to those payroll taxes. There's a full subcontractor module. If you have subcontractors, set those up. Retention is supported, not only on billings for the job, but if you set up a subcontractor with retention, it withholds 10% until the job, until that sub has done their work to your satisfaction, and then you can release the retention. There's also a pay when paid option, so subcontractors automatically go on hold until they've met all of their obligations. For instance, this window, there's a bunch of dates where in setup, you define what the required certificates or items are. And if they haven't been turned in by a required date, you'll see that warning sign and they'll be put on hold. And that'll stop the system from issuing any checks to that vendor or subcontractor. So you can have a single insurance policy or multiples. You have the option, if you have subcontractors that work on many jobs, you can set it up that way so they just have one insurance policy for every job they work on. If you do lien waivers, the system will print lien waivers for subcontractors when the job is done. Another concept we have in job costs called contract agreements. So you have a choice. You can run subcontractors through accounts payable. Also, you can do purchase orders, and it'll do the retention and all that for you. You can also set up contract agreements, and here you can have multiple jobs on the same, for the same contractor. So it's a single contract, but you can span it across multiple jobs, multiple cost codes. And it shows you the amounts released, the retention withheld. If you want to do a payment, it opens a window that's very similar to the accounts payable window when you pick your job and cost code. Automatically creates the payable voucher for you. One other note on setting up jobs, you can build those cost code by cost code, but what most people do is there's a copy feature. So most customers will set up a template job, just enter the job number and description, and it takes about 2 seconds to copy. And it'll copy all of those cost codes for you. So as opposed to entering them one at a time, for instance, if you have a lot of cost codes, and that's up to you, you can have a few cost codes on a job or you can have many. Templates are usually a good way to go for just creating new jobs in a fast manner. There's also a master cost code concept if you want to add a cost code to a job. If you set up master cost codes, which would be cost codes you use typically on all or most of your jobs, you just enter it like that, and then you enter your estimate. Let's jump into some posting options. So revenue, again, I have the POC selected. A new option that was released recently by Key2Act is called revenue performance obligations, where you break the contract down into deliverables, and you recognize the deliverable amount as they are completed to the customer's satisfaction. So most, for instance, construction companies this year had to switch from POC to the revenue performance obligations. Publicly traded companies had to do it this year. Non-public companies have to do that next year. So there's a loss recognition option, and here just some of the other things. If you're doing SOP billing, another billing type option, you can have the invoices from SOP update the job as billings. Here's some of your payroll options. Payroll post to job costs only would mean you're not using GP payroll. So you have the option, if you're using ADP, Paychecks, or some other outside payroll source, you can still enter your time, like in Time Track for jobs, and then there's an option to create an export file that gets sent directly to ADP or your payroll source. A few more options here just on closed jobs. Do you want to allow it if there's still committed? There's a closed job entry gets created when you close the job. That's required if you're doing POC. Allow job to close if net billed is not equal to expected contract, to make sure you bill everything. You want to leave that one unmarked. Allow inactive jobs to be closed only. So you can inactivate a job, and that would prevent any transactions from being posted to it. Most customers inactivate a job for like a month or two before they actually close a job. Then when you close it, it creates that final journal entry, and it comes out as a monthly POC calculation. Closed jobs, we have a job history window, so it's just like the job status window. And again, you can come back in here and drill down on the details and such. See the invoices if you need to know what happened there. And these are just all of the setup windows. We're not going to go into all of these. Labor rates also works with the Key2Act service management, so you can set up rates by position. Pay code, for instance, those would be the billing rates on a T&M job. Here's the account setup by division. So these would be your cost going into a WIP account, and then at the end, when you do your POC, that entry takes them out of WIP and it'll put them to cost of goods sold accounts as you define in this window. Then you have payroll offset accounts, invoice accounts, service transfer mapping. You can transfer a service call into a job or move costs from a service call to a job if you have service management. Security levels, you can have the main windows password protected. So job cost comes with the roles and tasks just like GP has. So you set up all of those at a user level. So this is an additional security within job cost on top of those. And then in this window, you can do things like not allow people to see payroll entry zoom. If you don't want somebody knowing what other employees make, for instance. And there's what's called a project manager's advisor module. So you can limit project managers to only see their assigned jobs. And the reports they would look at would only show their jobs. Few things in payroll, you can have overhead calculated automatically and post as cost to the jobs. So it would be on top of the labor wage portions. And here's some examples, like 401k, for instance, employee taxes. Can set those individual details up at a fixed or percentage amount. You can have a GL account tied to each individual one as well. Job cost has full union reporting capabilities and rate classes, where you can set up rates that define the pay rates and benefit rates. Prevailing wage is another option if you have any of those kind of jobs. And these are just the subcontractor setup. We talked a little bit about pay when paid, tracking lien waivers. There's a master subcontractor concept, so you can automatically, every time you add that vendor to the job, it would bring over the master setup information, including the cost codes for that sub. User defined is just throughout the system, you'll see user defined fields on every one of these windows, I think. And actually there was one more window out of the job maintenance. There's a whole window available for user defined information. So all of these, you define the label, whatever you want to call it. We have a job type that validates the types that you set up if you need it. All optional stuff here. There's a fixed asset integration for like heavy highway equipment or anybody who wants to use that. And talked about projects a little earlier. We also have that project status window, which is a roll-up of all the jobs assigned to that project. So if you click here, you see all the individual jobs on that project, and you can go right back to job status or see everything rolled up. You have the contract breakdown, change orders, original contract. And it's got the project build position. Again, all the jobs rolling up for project totals. Same concept for subcontractors. Where you can, if you see yellow, for instance, you can keep drilling back to find out what's going on. That was the one with insurance expired. Routines, you have your, this is where you close jobs. You can open a closed job. You can, you do month-end closing when you're ready to close off the month and create your POC entry. Should a mistake happen or should some extra costs come in that you want to beef up the revenue, you can reopen a period and redo your POC entry. It automatically reverses that entry, and then it would, then you just do the whole process again and create a new entry when you've made all your adjustments. Job cost comes with many reports, the text versions, and also there's about 25 or so SSRS reports, SQL reporting services. SQL ones are usually are a lot better, as well as the invoice formats that print if you have SSRS deployed. You can have detailed costs, billing reports, WIP reports, reports that help you tie out WIP at the end of the month, ties the job cost amounts to the individual GL accounts. You can put a start end date for transactions. Costs not in job costs, not in GL, and vice versa if you see discrepancies. Sorted reports, most of the SQL reports have parameters to only print for a division, a project manager, a project, those kind of things. A couple other items and we'll open it up for questions. There's also smart lists available for job costs. If you have smart list builder, an XML file is provided. You just import that once, and then you can have smart lists for most of the main job cost categories like jobs, cost codes. There's some add-on products we don't have time to show you, but like there's an Excel import. You can import jobs from Excel. There's a time entry Excel that works if you have time track and those kind of things. And then let's open it up for questions, Brandon, if you can do that.
Yes, I will do that. I will go ahead and take everyone off mute at this time. Don't be bashful. Please ask away if you have any. Well, Tim, it sounds like you covered it pretty well. We don't have any questions. So if you would like to, Tim covered just a vast majority of options and setup items that you can do within Job Cost. If you'd like to have a more specific conversation on functionality or how to set up something within the product, please let us know. We would be happy to have that conversation with you. So with that, thank you everyone for joining our webinar today, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.